Danger Cats comedy troupe. Have you heard of these guys?
No.
So they were set to take the stage in New Westminster, BC, in New West in March, and the owner of the House of Comedy, Rick Bronson, who is a personal friend of mine. Rick owns the comic strip in West Edmonton Mall, and he owns the comic strip in, what's that big one in New Jersey? Not Mall of America, but the other Gramscian Mall, the big, huge mall in New Jersey. Whatever it is, no, so he's got comedy clubs across North America, and they've canceled the show, Alberta's Danger Cats, which is sort of, I guess, putting a lot of people in an interesting position, trying to decide how they feel about this, because ultimately, like, do people have a right to freedom of speech? People get sensitive when like comedians are canceled or when comedy shows are canceled. People will say, well, comedy and live comedy is supposed to be, like sort of the last bastion of free speech. Like, comedians are supposed to be able to say things before anybody else. Like, I think of Gilbert Gottfried, like it was joking about the Japanese tsunami, like as it was happening. And Gottfried like lost his, he was the Aflac. Remember Aflac, that duck boy? He used to do the Aflac, and he lost that gig and all this, and everybody said, well, hang on a second, comedians, we're supposed to treat comedians differently. They're supposed to, Dave Chappelle's supposed to be able to talk about transgender people, and comedians, George Carlin's supposed to be able to use all the 7 words, and like stand-up comedy is supposed to be different.
This is pretty...
Well, this comedy troupe was selling T-shirts, and we'll show the shirt on here. I mean, like, it kind of blows my mind. And again, I guess I'm kind of advertising for these guys in a way, but what do you want me to do? They were selling T-shirts, basically making light of serial killer Robert Pickton, who is responsible for the deaths of dozens of missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Yeah.
And the T-shirt reads, it's horrific, obviously, and it shows Robert Pickton and somebody else, high-fiving each other with slabs of bacon. And it says over 50 flavors of hookery smoked bacon. Of course, everybody knows the story of Robert Pickton and sex workers he would bring back to their pig farm. And so these are these guys, and they're like kind of the shock guys. And before this story had surfaced, I play on this basketball team, and the guys on my basketball team were talking about this, and we're kind of debating this on this Danger Cats comedy troupe. And my understanding, I've never been to one of their shows. My understanding is they've been described to me as like pure offensive comedy. They make a lot of light of Indigenous people in Canada. They make light, obviously, of Robert Pickton and other things, and it's like, it's certainly not my brand of comedy. If you ask me, it's not comedy at all. But I know that some people are really starting to push back on Rick Bronson. I've seen it on Facebook right now, saying that, hey, listen, Rick, whether or not you agree with what these guys are doing or what they're saying. I mean, the Danger Cats themselves, by the way, pulled the T-shirt down off their website. They're not selling it anymore. And they said all the money, by the way, the proceeds of the T-shirt was going to go to Ukraine, which I thought was kind of fucked up. These guys are, I don't know. I don't know them. I don't know them personally. I've never interviewed them. I've never been to one of their shows. So I'm going to kind of limit my commentary, but I do know that somebody that's selling fucking Robert Pickton shirts, we're not wired the same way. A dear friend of mine from junior high school, we remember Jennifer all the time, had ultimately fallen into sex work and was murdered, and her murder has never been solved. And that's something that has impacted my commitment to talking about domestic violence and the sex trade and many things. Serial killers across Canada, missing and murdered women, a million things. Yeah. The opioid crisis, drug resources, trauma-informed response to issues that we see in our society. And so, but I don't think you have to have lost somebody in your personal life to feel strongly about this. I just think, number one, this is a business. And obviously, this comedy troupe knows it's a business because they're monetizing their comedy. They're selling T-shirts. They're selling tickets to their shows. And Rick Bronson is an entrepreneur as well. Yeah. And the House of Comedy in New SBC has to look out for its own brand as well. And I don't know about you, but if I'm in Vancouver, I mean, Robert Pickton took his victims from the streets of the downtown east side. That's where he took them from. They were killed in this part of Canada. They were killed on his pig farm, or many of them buried unceremoniously, their body. I don't even need to get into it. But this all this is like where this happened. And so for me, Wise Kyle asked me to touch on this and to comment on this. My opinion on this is, number one, I was really hard. I'm not going to compare these two, okay? But I talked about this on the show a while ago. I was set to interview Jordan Peterson when Jordan Peterson was coming to Edmonton, and he was doing a book launch event at the Citadel Theatre. Mm-hmm. And the Citadel Theatre, when there was outcry about that booking, canceled Jordan Peterson's suite, canceled his theater.
Yeah.
They said that you can't appear here. And so Jordan Peterson, kind of in a hissy fit or maybe publicity, canceled his entire Edmonton trip, canceled the interview, what have you. And I felt like I should respond. And I was tough on the Citadel. And to this day, I'm tough on the Citadel. I don't think it was the right move.
Sure.
I think that a theater space needs to be a space for freedom of thought. I'm not talking about hate speech. I don't think that, think of what you want of Jordan Peterson. I think at this point, he's kind of become a parody of himself. I saw him in person at length at the Tucker Carlson show. I'm not the biggest fan of Jordan Peterson, but some of my friends are. That's fine. You do you. But Jordan Peterson is not out there pushing hate speech. Okay? If somebody was out there inciting, or it doesn't have to be your flavor, but if somebody was out there inciting a riot, if somebody was out there celebrating or monetizing or making light of serial killers and missing and murdered Indigenous women, that's a completely different situation. A comedy club does not have to apologize for telling those guys to pound sand.
And I get it. The comedy club's like the last bastion of free speech. And I'll go back to Jordan Peterson. I don't know. Some of his stuff about Elliot Page was bordering on a little bit of hate speech, but I do agree that he is kind of monetizing his whole life, which is just a shit show, which, he's probably just getting all the money he can right now. But I will say that I agree with you. This is really fucked up. And even I'm looking here, some of the victims' families even commented. This one here, my sister was murdered on the Pickton farm, and although I love comedy, all in caps, there is nothing funny about this show or any of these murders, and I just pretty much agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Kenzie says, so Jespo, nobody ever made jokes about Jack the Ripper. I don't know. I mean, have you heard a great routine about Jack the Ripper? And also, wasn't Jack the Ripper like 150 years ago?
Yeah, we're talking about,
I don't know.
This is recent.
And in here, Justin's not wrong. He says, if you don't like the shirt, don't buy it. You don't need to cancel the show. Weak humans. I mean, number one, if you don't like the shirt, don't buy it. That's fine. And you don't need to cancel. Well, they can cancel if they fucking want.
Yeah.
Like if you're saying, if you don't like the shirt, don't buy it, what are you also saying? You're saying that they should have a right to make and sell the shirts, right? So if they have a right to make and sell the shirts, what are you saying? You're saying that they have the right to operate a commercial enterprise based on their own conviction, right? That's what you're saying, Justin. So does the comedy club operator, the owner of the comedy club. He's not obligated to let people take his stage. I'm not obligated to have people sit in this studio. If I want to invite somebody to the show, I can. If I want to tell them to go fuck themselves, I can. That's what comes with commercial enterprise. Every single time I say fuck on the show, I think about the implications of it. Does it build audience or take audiences away? Does it impress sponsors? Does it turn sponsors off? We think about it because it's a commercial enterprise, and I do what I think is right for the health of this venture. And that's what the Danger Cats are doing with their, in my mind, ill-advised and inappropriate and offensive T-shirts. I get that some people like those types of shirts. That's fine. You do you. But the comedy club owner is in no way obligated to give them an opportunity to take his stage and use his venue to do whatever they're going to do. These guys are not being canceled. They're having an event canceled. I was not canceled. I had people rally against me, try to burn our house down, try to get me fired successfully from radio. They tried to do it again on this show. We're not canceled if we keep going. The Danger Cats can keep going. They can find another venue. They can open their own venue. They can stream live on YouTube. They can do it out in a field. They can do it at their parents' house. They can do it at a public space. They can do whatever they want. Canceled is a thing and is not a thing at the same time. But if you support their right to make and sell those T-shirts, you inherently must support the right of the comedy club owner to tell them to get lost.